Hi, I am Sydney and I am a servant of the Almighty God. This episode I want to speak about medication because there are indications that from ancient times God has granted to every society the ability to medicate, to treat illnesses, to treat diseases, to treat many conditions. So we find that there are lots of plants and there's a lot in the ecosystem around us. And the real question is, how did these people recognize the potency of certain compounds that existed around them in the plants, in the soil, and wherever they got it? And some would say that, well, that's just a product of, natural selection. They just tried different things. But if we really examine that, think about how long it would take, right? Because even in our modern trials, right, where we go through these rigorous phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and even phase 4, checking for side effects and all this kind of stuff, we have very rigorous standards to go through. We identify one compound, we look at dosing and all kinds of stuff, right? How did they do that out of an almost infinite number of products around them and trees? I mean, you think about it, any ecosystem, there are so many trees. There is all kinds of, different soils. There is all of these different conditions and all these different items in any ecosystem. And yet, these medicine men and women, they found the specific compounds, and that actually has gotten into our modern sciences. Because now we can take any plant or anything that's any resource and do a chemical analysis of it, see what the different compounds, and then we can systematically go through each compound and look at each compound and every combination of it. So it takes time, and that's what they say is why drugs can be so expensive. But that whole process, it can be an exhaustive process and very finely tailored, right? Take this compound at this dosing level and all of these things. So we say, oh, take so much of this and some of that, and we could find the active ingredients, and it takes years and years. How did these medicine men and women, how did they receive that knowledge? And some would still say, well, it was just a process of, isolating this and trying that. Okay. But that behavior, we also see it in animals. We see animals that can go out and identify for certain conditions, like we talk about the chimps, and we even we see like elephants, and going out, and lots of different animals going out and finding things in the environment that are beneficial to their health. How do we explain that? Because at some point, if we don't want to attribute that to, again, nature having the ability to impart that not just to individual animals, but somewhere deep within that, what I like to think of, that knowledge base, right? We don't know how that knowledge is stored. What's the media? Like we have, silicon, or, well, not hard drives anymore, but, we store it within non-volatile RAM type of thing, right? Where is that stored? That it's passed from one animal to the next, right? That they know that, because there's, we say, okay, well, yeah, the intelligent maybe is a chimpanzee, orangutan, but we also hear things about the monarch butterfly, right? That it lays its eggs on certain plants so that the caterpillar that is born from that egg, because of what it's eating, so the butterfly, which obviously doesn't, just follow other butterflies and say, well, no, it's doing this based on some inherent knowledge, some intelligence. And this is part of the things we have to recognize. Something is imparting this intelligence. We see it in individual animals. We see it in animals that live, for instance, like ants. And all of these things. We see plants, right, that create conditions so that the certain animals, like the ants that give off formic acid that becomes a protector for them. So we see in some ways this is in some form of like self-medication, like I think it's either chimpanzees or orangutans that eat certain things that get rid of worms and all this stuff. How did they learn this? How did they learn this? Similar to the medicine men and women. So what we must recognize is that we have a loving creator who cares for us, who imparts knowledge to us. And over time, but through those of us who question things, we question, is the earth really the center of the universe? Is the earth really flat? And now, who or what is nature that imparts all this knowledge through all these ancient civilizations so that they can heal themselves, so that they provided medicines way before our modern medicines, where we could do chemical analysis and combine compounds and do all this testing. And even ours today, this is why we have all these side effects and we find all these things, because again, our science is pretty young. It's a few hundred years old. And so when you think in terms of the fullness of time, we think of the time of the dinosaurs. We think of an intelligence that designed way back then. We can understand that ours is pretty primitive. By comparison, we may think it's so wonderful. And it is, to the extent of our knowledge, but we must recognize that the Creator who cared and loves us all imparted that knowledge to many who they use whatever methods to communicate, to be more in tune, so that this knowledge could be imparted to them. And so, there are lots of cases. I think if you look at, I think it was Edgar Cayce who was able to go in visions and into this trance and find diseases and all of that stuff. So we know, if we look down through history, look at our own history, we must recognize that medicines has been granted to us down through time, even today, for many of the diseases, right? But I think that a lot of the synergies that can be realized because we have gone away from recognizing God the Creator. We have created our own God, nature, because we're so smart. We don't need a supreme intelligent creator. We created our own God, nature. Nature gave us all of this. Nature did all these things. And can you see the synergies, how powerful we can be when we recognize God? When we search, we recognize that the godless use nature, but we say, God, please grant this to us, so that we can heal those around us, so that we can enhance and move our civilization forward. So medication is, because we are imperfect, because there are things in our ecosystems, we can enhance and move medicines much faster, move it forward much faster than just by inspiration. We can do research now. The rules of creation are being revealed to us. We can get in sync with the Creator and move medicines forward much, much faster. So I hope I gave you some things to think about based on our knowledge of medicines that even when they were passed down by oral traditions, so that we recognize all of these things came from our Supreme Creator, the Almighty God, the one whose omnipotence and omnipresence we need to be aware of. I want to thank you for taking the time to view this, and I always like to say that this is not a coincidence that you came across this. Recognize that this was a result of decisions that you've made in the past, and we can all be part of moving this forward, moving not just ourselves but this entire civilization into a convergence of the science and the scriptures into a much brighter and much more blessed future for everyone that comes after us. I want to thank you for taking the time, and until, may God bless.